He had to leave.
Okay, welcome everybody to our public council meeting for October. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, Judith, are you taking the roll call?
Yes, I am.
Okay, please do the roll call.
Certainly. Mayor Brett Anderson.
Here.
Catherine Price Engelhardt.
Here.
Helen Hahol.
Here.
Andrew Lubin.
Here.
Jason Manis?
Maness here.
Manis. Thank you. And welcome. Carletha Murray.
Here.
Bob Paul.
Here.
Scott Robinson.
Here.
Nancy Sherlock.
Here.
Borough Solicitor.
Yes, Scott Holbert on behalf of Flagrant Associates.
Borough Manager.
Here. Thank you. Roll call, Council President.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, I want to, before we start the substance of the meeting, I want to welcome Jason Maness to the council. We're very happy that he volunteered to take Ted Parker's slot when Ted moved away. So Jason just got sworn in at 5:30 this evening. So he's a newbie, so let's go gently on him for the first month or so. Anyway, thank you, Jason, and welcome. Are there any other announcements or presentations?
No, thank you at this time.
Excuse me? Oh, yes. I should report that we had an executive session tonight at 6 o'clock to discuss some personnel, real estate, and litigation matters.
And just to add, the real estate and litigation matters involve blighted properties in the borough.
Correct. Okay, now we'll move on to public comment. First public comment, Deborah Colgan. As you know, state your name and address, please.
Deborah Colgan, 120 West Hendrickson Avenue. Good evening. I'd like to announce that there will be a tree planting in Williamson Park. The Environmental Advisory Council, together with the group Save Williamson Park, have partnered with the Tree Vitalize program to plant 8 trees near the pavilion, picnic pavilion. The planting will be on Saturday, November 19th at 10 a.m. Volunteers are needed. Wear gloves and bring spades or shovels. Volunteers can contact the EAC or the Save Williamson Park group to sign up or ask questions. The EAC tree tenders are coordinating the event. Save Williamson Park has collected donations from many generous members of the community. The planting is at no cost to the borough and does not require any borough resources. EAC volunteers will keep them watered. They will be staked and mulched with tree protectors added. Trees are not just pretty things. They are workhorses for us. They impact many facets of our life: environmental, economic, safety, quality of life, spiritual, cultural. They are a symbol of the best of our human qualities. Trees represent hope for a better future. All borough residents and businesses are encouraged to plant a tree on their properties this fall, preferably a native species. With each tree planted, we are one step closer to restoring our shrinking tree canopy. So this event prompts me to return to my continuous topic when I see you guys, our parks. This planting also represents our community's love for our parks. At the summer events in Williamson Park, it was heartening to hear so many people express their support for the park to remain whole and to be improved. You might only hear a few people plead with you at these meetings, but be assured that there are many, many more who feel the same. So trust us when we tell you that we need the redevelopment authority out of the park and that we want you to clearly state that it stays a park in its entirety and in perpetuity. As it stands, Morrisville is advertising that the park is up for development. It distracts from desirable development opportunities. We want a sustainable and attractive hometown. Please help us be just that. And then one last thing, as council and the administration is aware, sadly, half of the Riverfront Preserve entry garden was cut down last week, but we don't know who did it. Years of work and many purchased and donated plants, trees, shrubs were wiped out. If anyone saw any workers at the preserve, please let us know. A lovely little area that hosted many beneficial native species is now a naked eyesore. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Don Rice.
Don Rice, resident. I'm going to do something different tonight. I'm not going to talk about saving Williamson Park. I am going to talk about, it's a little follow-up to what Debbie had to say. In the area of the picnic pavilion where we're going to be planting trees, there is a very large, very dead, Bert Mott says it's a sugar maple. If it falls, it's either going to crash into the picnic pavilion, goes the other way, it goes into the Little League dugout. It is a liability for the borough if someone were to get hurt with a dead tree there, and one good wind and this thing could come down. It's really and truly dead.
Where is that exactly located?
Between the picnic pavilion and the Little League dugout, you can see it. It's the only big dead tree there. Bert did say it was a sugar maple. The wood of the sugar maple is valuable. I'm just saying to the borough, it might be somebody might pay you to cut it down. Change topic now. I'm going to talk about an issue that's really difficult for me to talk about, but it's an issue that I had to come face to face with a few times now recently, and that's homelessness in Morrisville. I volunteered down at the Riverfront Preserve, and 3 times now within the last year, we have had people camping in the preserve. They were homeless. And the first time, it was a pretty bad situation. The guy down there was a criminal. He had his girlfriend with him. They were doing drugs from as far as we can tell from the stuff we recovered when we cleaned it up. The guy is now a resident of the Bucks County Prison. So he's no longer homeless. His girlfriend has disappeared into thin air. I don't know where she is. We then had a couple. I never even saw them. I just heard about them. And the chief went down and spoke with them, and they disappeared. We cleaned up their mess. It wasn't too bad. And the 2 of us, my wife and myself, cleaned it up in a few hours. And the 3rd time was just recently. It was within the last 2 weeks. It was an encampment. They had a couple of tents. They had an American flag flying. And, I mean, they're not doing anything wrong. They're homeless. They need to live somewhere. But the place they chose to live was the Riverfront Preserve. And y'all have made regulations that say, yeah, between dawn and dusk, or dusk and dawn, rather, you can't stay there. So what do? We called the police. And the officer who responded initially was hesitant to do something because, as he said, what do you want me to do about it? And I agree. What can he do? I can't be done yet. Really was 3 minutes? All right. What I would like is for you to do is, one, first, thank you to the chief. He's helped. Second, I know you don't have any money to deal with this situation. There's 80 homeless beds in Bucks County. The county doesn't have much, but they do have resources. If you could gather just the information about the resources and share it, make it publicly available to the police. So when they respond to a situation like this, they can say, you may be homeless. Here's a number to call. And they might be able to help. But it's a problem in Morrisville. It's more than at the preserve. There are other places. I've seen them car camping in Williamson Park. I know a place along the canal where they've camped. It's here, and it's a problem nobody talks about. So I thought I'd be the first person to talk about it.
Can I add something, Bob?
Sure.
So there was an encampment down at the end of Post Road in Morrisville, and I did notify the chief, and he went and did what he could. I also have a friend who's a social worker for the county, and I notified them. And unfortunately, one of the issues is if they want to stay homeless, there's nothing you can do. So my friend went down there with a group of people, and they talked to them. And none of them wanted to go anywhere other than what they were doing. So it's a sad situation, but there's really not much we could do if they don't want help.
We called Bucks County homeless advocate. He works for the county. The guy's name is Alan. He's a sober alcoholic and has worked as a homeless advocate in the county for 8 years. He went down with us to their encampment. He was going to give them information on what they could do to help themselves. Unfortunately, by that time they were gone.
Yeah, I've also worked with Bucks County Family Services Association that I know does some things for homeless and gives them shelter, but you can't drag them in there.
No, and there's only 80 beds for all
Right.
of Bucks County. The guy said there's that many people in Falls Township alone. I don't know how many are homeless in the borough. You don't see them unless you really look hard, but if you do, you find them.
If
Thank
I
you,
may,
John.
Council President.
Go ahead.
We too have experienced this in the borough office. What some of the staff has done is they've looked up some of the churches and the information, and they actually provided it to some of the homeless persons that we had come into the borough office. And we had sent them to those churches. We hadn't heard anything back. We were hopeful that it was helpful, but we too have been a little bit involved in anything that we can do to help. So thank you for that.
Jane Berger. Again, how time flies. Obviously, I'm a newbie at this. I don't even know how to run the timer.
Old-fashioned secondhand. Good evening, Jane Berger, 90 West Maple Avenue, Morrisville. A couple questions regarding the agenda. 8C is the motion regarding the Johnson Controls proposal. I just want to clarify that that's a maintenance contract for their HV system or HA, whatever this thing is in here, whatever they call it. I don't know the letters.
If I may.
I didn't think it had a V in it. That's why I was stumbling.
Yes, Jane, you are correct. This is a
Okay,
maintenance
thank you.
program. Thank you.
Thank you. Under other business, I see there's a motion regarding alcohol use in Williamson Park. As we know, Williamson Park is composed of several parcels. And the two that I want to address are the ones that are the one I call the Three Churches parcel and the one under the trust. So as you consider this, I believe that has no alcohol worded in that. So as you look to this in the park, I'm sure you're going to consider other parcels in that area that exclude those two, because we know beer fests are in neighboring communities, and that can be a positive event, as we know, be well controlled. So I just wanted to point that out. And I did just notice there was a slight change in the wording to the salute to the flag this evening. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what was the last comment?
There was a change in the wording of the salute to the flag, slight change in the wording of it. There were two words that are no longer there.
I do think if the churches were asked, they might change. I do agree that police says no.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but because I'm concerned about the same thing, frankly. Okay. Any other public comments? Anyone else who came to want to make a last minute comment? Okay. Next is approval of minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for Borough Council regular meeting of September 20th?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
I
Who made the second?
Andrew Lubin.
Andrew made the second. Bear with me, everyone.
I said second, but if somebody else did, then this is whoever said it there. I don't know if you heard me on the phone.
We'll give you partial credit, Scott.
Okay.
And one abstention. Okay, that would be all ayes and one abstention.
Right. Okay, moving on. Finance Treasurer's Report. We still don't have a treasurer.
You
Do we
have
have
a,
anything that constitutes a treasurer's report?
yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Mr. Paul,
Yes,
we do have the financial report,
great.
and I was hoping that at some point in time, I know we just had a finance meeting, but we didn't necessarily have the most updated. I see some of the things have changed, some of the numbers have changed from last month, but some are still all the same. There's just not, everything's not in it yet. So I guess my time's up.
I'm trying to kill this thing.
So.
I was turned off.
Or I could, anybody who's interested, we could sit down and just discuss some of it, line, a couple changes, and maybe we can sit with Judith and she can explain some of it to it, I guess. I don't know. The bottom line is there's some deficiencies if you read the totals. And like just in your first, I'll just give you a couple.
If I may, Nancy.
Yes. Like our even our taxes.
Right, we're completely aware that there's deficiencies, and it is a work in progress. We're still continuing to work with Tom Josiah and his company, and we're continuing to work with the staff downstairs with training, with the deposits and so forth. We are actually going to go into a process that we're going to utilize with an admin's training. So in all actuality, we do know that there's deficiencies, and we know where they're at, and we're working on fulfilling the effectiveness fully. So we have a completed report, and it's been an ongoing process. And I have mentioned that at several of the finance meetings. It's a report in progress. But thank you for that.
You know how much longer Tom Josiah is going to be working on this?
Tom's going to continue with us throughout the year.
Okay. And
Yes.
are we going to get any kind of report on this, or do we have any status report update or anything like that?
Tom does not have a status report. I will give a status report.
Okay.
As of now, we are reconciled up until July. And Tom will be meeting with me again shortly, because what he does is he comes and he picks up more information that we have. So we have the August and September information to provide to him. And office staff will be working on getting the items input through Edmunds. I've been working on training all year in all the different facets of Edmunds, and the staff has been learning slowly on how to utilize Edmunds. So that's why it's a work in progress.
One question about state aid or pension. Are we expected, when do we normally get, does that come in two parts?
The state aid came in one part. It was over $86,000. It was deposited into the general fund, and I just did the paperwork today. We will be forwarding those funds to PMRS for the deposit into the pension plan. We have so many days to do that, and we're currently working on that.
Because we of course, we anticipated 90,000 and none of that has come in yet. I was just wondering when.
Certainly. No, we did receive 86, and actually the MMO was 82 and some odd dollars.
Okay.
It's not
Thank you.
exact numbers, but we actually received more than the MMO stated.
So as this reads right now, our general fund revenue total is a minus 1 million,
Again, it's incorrect.
meaning that it's just not complete.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, could I get a motion to approve the bill list and pay bills?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Just for the public's knowledge, I'd like to say that this bill list consists of $185,076.91 for the month.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. $7:01.
Correct. All ayes, one abstention. Council President.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to the mayor's report. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to talk about a couple of events we still have coming up this month. We have 2 trunk or treat events coming up. I'll give you a little detail about that, but before I do that, I want to say that I think we've had a very successful season of things going on here. It's really great to see happen, especially as we're all getting back to normal after COVID. Everything from the Memorial Day parade right up until these trunk or treat events. I want to thank everybody who went into each and every one of those events and put their time and everything into that, because it really was a good summer for Morrisville Borough, and we hope to see a lot more of that next year. So the upcoming events, we have a trunk or treat at Morrisville Grandview being put on by their PTO. They are currently looking for volunteers and donations, and that will take place in the Grandview parking lot. If you have any questions, you can call me personally, or the information is on my Facebook page.
Can you give the date?
Yes, thank you. It's the 21st.
Thank you.
So then the following week, and if you can do both, I'm sure your kids will appreciate it, and if not, you have some options. So on the 28th, there will be a second trunk or treat event being put on by the Solid Rock Youth Center, as well as the Compass Church and the Morrisville Police Department. That will have a trunk or treat that will be located at the Compass Fellowship Church, followed by a movie. The movie will be Coco over at Williamson Park. There'll be a bounce house, face painting, and it's a good way to wrap up our season of all the things we've done this year. So I'm really looking forward to both of those, and I hope as many people as possible can make it. Real quick, I want to thank all the people from Save Williamson Park. You've been very diligent and dedicated, so I'm glad to hear you met your goal to put some trees up, and I also want to thank each and every person that took the time and effort to donate their personal funds to that. I really am. I think that's a great thing, so thank you everybody in that group. So every month that I've been up here, except for maybe the first one or two, I've talked about our manpower. Now, the reason I'm addressing this tonight is because in the last couple of weeks, I've seen a lot of activity on social media in reference to the subject. So I don't like to address social media too much, but this is an important topic. So as you look back at the meetings, this is not going unnoticed. We are attempting to get us more manpower. And I want to thank council, because last month they voted to move a guy from part-time to full-time. Unfortunately, and my apologies to that officer, personally from me, that hasn't gone a little faster, but we'll take care of that first thing tomorrow. So, but I want to be clear, this doesn't bring us over the finish line. This really puts us right back to where we started when I first started asking for manpower in the first place. I also want to be clear that this is not a shot at anybody up here in council, because they all are very concerned about it, as well as the borough finances, and they wanted to see it done the right way, and I don't think that's wrong. It's not just the police department that is shorthanded. It is the road crew and Judith in the office. It is the entire town. So I think we have an interesting budget season coming up. There are some things that will be discussed that I know are question marks, whether it be the EIT or the second round of ARPA money, but I think there's going to be a lot to discuss, and we have a lot of very intelligent people here to put their minds together. I'd like to also ask that the public feel free to show up to those meetings. They are open to the public. And one other thing, I noticed somebody went on one of those sites where there was a lot of comments about the manpower, and they posted each and every one of our phone numbers and emails. And I just want to say, I think that's a great thing. Everybody should feel comfortable reaching out to anybody up here. So please do that. The more we hear from the voters and the residents, the better. It helps a lot more than you probably realize. So we thank you ahead of time for being involved. Everybody here, I always like to thank the people that come out, and I know a lot more people than you probably realize take the time to watch this at home as well. And one last thing. So as speaking of council, as I was earlier, we want to congratulate our new president, Bob Paul. Bob, I think you did an amazing job as the interim, and I look forward to your leadership. So thank you very much for moving into that position. Helena Ball, congratulations on becoming our new vice president. I know how much you love being on council. I know how passionate you are about it, and I know you're going to do your very best. So I thank you for, again, stepping up to that position. And then we want to welcome our new council person down here to my right, Jason Maness. Jason, best wishes, good luck. We're really glad to have you. Anybody who wants to come sit up here and help the town in what can be a very thankless job, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. So welcome, Jason. And that's all for me. I'll let you go.
Thank you for the kind words, Mr. Mayor. Chief McClay.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Tonight I want to talk about the two grants. The county casino grant was put in last month for $134,000. We will know on October 28th whether we get that, and that will go towards 2 brand new police cars. Last week I put in the PCCD grant, which stands for the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. I put in for $131,000 worth of equipment, which included training, bonuses for the officers, tablets for the vehicles, LPRs for the vehicles, locks and alarms for the police station and the evidence room, body cameras, a wellness program for the officers, and a public service announcement that the objective behind that is to lower the thefts in the borough of vehicles and thefts from vehicles. So we will know that on December 14th, whether we get that or not. We put a lot of time into that grant, along with Darletta Johnson, which I couldn't have done this without her. And that is a 100% grant that's paid by the state. There is no match for the borough. And the mayor talked about the trunk or treat that we have coming up. And just to give you an idea of manpower right now, 8 full-time officers. I still have 1 that is now on limited duty. He's back from IMD. And I'm hoping Justin Bickhart is starting to heal from his tragedy, and I'm hoping he's back next week. So I'm hoping to at least be up to 7 next week, and I'm hoping by next month to be back up to at least 8. The officers have worked very hard this summer. They have sacrificed. They have worked every time I've asked them. I know it's cost the borough a lot of money in overtime, but we were able to maintain 2 officers on the street at all times. I have to compliment my officers. They've done a wonderful job, and I know they've had to sacrifice time with their family and, doing things that they want to do in the summertime. With that, that's all I have this evening.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
That's the chief of question. What is the PSA program? What the public service announcement? What is that?
If I get it,
Right.
we'll produce a video that'll be live streamed. I will put postcards mailed out to people, and it's all about theft of vehicles and reducing theft from vehicles. It'll be, and I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but it's going to be live streamed out. It'll be about leaving your keys in the car, about leaving your key fobs in the car. Auto theft has become has really taken off all throughout the country because of the key fobs. And the vehicles are being used, they're being shipped overseas, they're being used for other crimes. And I think if we can, the part of this PCCD grant was to reduce violent crime and to increase your clearance rate. So the idea behind reducing violent crime is that these vehicles won't be able to be used in another place for violent crime. And obviously, I'm not going to be able to use it for a clearance rate, but I'm hoping to prevent the thefts by people knowing, don't leave your key fobs in your car. Don't leave your spare set of keys in your other car that you leave open, while your other car sits in your driveway next to it, and they drive away in that car.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So you said you're going to just live stream this? Well, this will be on your Facebook page?
No.
Oh, you don't know yet? Okay. But thank you.
This is very fluid. I got this from the victims from Bucks County. They did something like that this year. We sat down and got some advice from them. So if we get this, if we get it, that's a part of the grant that is really on the edge of what they want. But I thought I'd try it and see if they'll give me the money for it. And if they do, then I'll reach out and do something
Okay.
a little unique. That may just reduce crime just a little bit, but it's targeted towards cars.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. Chief, where are we on equipment power when it comes to specifically vehicles? Because the grant is for 2 new vehicles. Where do we stand with vehicles right now?
I don't understand your question. How many new cars do we have?
Yeah, how many do we have? Are they we have enough vehicles now?
We have 5 vehicles and 1 in the shop that's trying to get put back together.
Okay. You know when that'll be put back together?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
So when we get the car that's already out there being, I forget what the term is, to get it outfitted, are we going to have 6 car, or I'm going to exclude the car that's in the shop. Are we going to go from 5 to 6, or are you going to retire any cars?
I got to look at everything. We do have cars that are 2014s that need to go to greener pastures, so I have to make a financial decision on what I'm keeping and what I'm not. But if I end up getting the casino grant, then I know I have 2 more in the pipeline that are coming. We're behind on vehicles. We should have had vehicles back in 2020. So if I get the casino grant along with the one that's we're waiting to get now, we'll have our 3 new vehicles, and then I will start retiring vehicles.
Okay, thanks.
You have a question?
Chief, real quick, I just want to publicly, out to the public and yourself, thank you. I know you mentioned earlier how everybody's had to cover a lot during the summer, and you and I pretty much talk almost every day, so I know how hard that has been at times, not just on you, but on all the guys and women. And so I thank you and all of our officers for making sure we always had 2 people in the street. So it is so much appreciated. I just wanted to say that publicly.
Thank you. My guys sacrificed a lot this summer, and they really stepped up, and especially with Justin losing his baby. They stepped up. They did a good job.
Thank you, Chief. I just wanted to echo the comments of the mayor that we truly appreciate what you and your staff have done. I know you've been stretched very thin all year, and I think that it's been remarkable. You've maintained double coverage the entire time and kept our streets safe, so we appreciate that.
And if I may, I'd like to echo the same. Thank you, all the
Can I
officers.
ask one more?
Chief.
Can you guys hear me?
Go ahead.
Chief.
One more question. That sign up in front of the firehouse, I had asked the past couple times for that sign to be moved around town. Specifically, the time when I almost got killed down by Route 1 when the traffic lights were being programmed differently each week. But it appears that sign is kind of permanent now for the firehouse. We just spent $1 million on the firehouse. If the plan was to have a sign in front of the firehouse, couldn't we have had something that looks a little nicer than that? I mean, that's kind of, I don't know. It's a portable sign, but it's not being put around town. Is that sign ever going to move, or is it going to die there?
I can let the chief answer this, but I do know it has something to do with the battery and the electric.
You want to respond, Chief?
I really don't know what to say. We have the permission of the fire department to put it there. It has constant electric there. To move it around is going to be an issue for me. And then in or John, who and I work together to put those signs up, I'll put it away in the garage. And then bring it out every once in a while. But I think it's a good spot. We have permission from the fire department, and it ends up being a real public service announcement to things. Where else I can put it that I'm going to have guaranteed electric? I don't know.
We got to be locked up. We can't just sit there without being locked up. So we just want to look it up and pull it away. We had it locked there.
Yeah, we have a cable around it, and it goes through a pole and into the firehouse. And being in front of the firehouse, I think it has a good chance of not going anywhere, which it hasn't. We got that, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago now. And we've only moved it once. We put it down in Bridge and I don't remember why we moved it there, but we had only moved it once. But it gets to be, it'll be a pain if we got to move it around in different places and figure out electric and.
Do we have?
If Scott would like to do that, he can put that as one of his hobbies.
Do we have a letter from the firehouse stating that they gave permission?
No, I don't need that.
I know, but I had some firemen approach me at National Night Out complaining about that sign. So
I got from the chief that it belongs there.
I know, but perhaps if we got a letter, it just process some procedures to have a letter so we could say, like, we do have permission from you guys.
We have permission. I don't need a contract or a letter. We have permission. Or would it be there?
I understand. I'm just letting you know that I had some firemen approach me.
There's always a couple people, no matter what, that you can't keep happy. And they don't want it there. But the chief says, I want it there. So it stays.
Yeah, I'd say unless the chief, either chief, fire, or police have a problem with it, it stays.
But if somebody wants to volunteer to move it around and find a plug and make sure it doesn't go anywhere and secure it someplace.
And that property owner has to accept it as well.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a lot of larger area. These were all the questions that were answered when I was asking the same question.
Yeah, we've had it there for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now.
And someday maybe we'll have a really nice marquee in town, but hey.
It's just interesting why some firemen are complaining, that's all.
That's fine. Okay, moving on.
Most people like to complain.
I know.
Okay,
Don't I know it?
Firehouse of 50 officers. Did all 50 of them come to you? Probably not. Probably just 2 of them that go, I don't like that. But Matt says it stays. And just last week, for 3 weeks, we had an advertisement up there for their fire prevention, which they wouldn't have had if we didn't have that there. So it works both ways. We have a very good relationship with the fire department, and being the emergency manager, I have a very good relationship with Matt. So.
Thank you, Chief. Borough Manager, report.
Good evening, everyone. You have my report before you. We have a couple items with the capital projects. Unfortunately, the Bridge Street project, which you see the rendering over in the other side of the room, has been put on hold and will most likely be put on hold until spring of next year. At this time, there's more engineering that will be needed due to the soil erosion and so forth and the water levels. There's some more engineering that's needed. I'm currently working with PEC and DCNR for more grant funds to pay for a redesign for this project with our engineers. You will see on the agenda there's a resolution to do so. The matching funds would come from the DCNR project itself, the Bridge Street project itself, so it would be at no cost to the borough. So at this time, Gilmore, myself, and PEC are working with DCNR to see if there's something we can do to acquire more funding for the redesign. And if we can accomplish that, the project, of course, will be recontinued in the spring of next year. So we do have biweekly meetings in the council packets and the drops. You will see there's biweekly reports regarding this information. So if you're interested in seeing about the project itself, that information is in the drop. There's also continued collaboration with a possible donor for engineering regarding the resurrection of the Manor Park grant. We're starting to really lose a lot of time at this point. We've been working with a couple entities along with Gilmore, trying to come up with some viable options. And again, we're still working on that. I did request a grant timeline extension for 1 year for the Williamson Park Planning Grant, which we've talked about a lot. Some funds have been expended to date prior to my being here for this grant. And I've talked to everyone at our finance meetings regarding this. We're asking for a 1-year extension for this, and we need to come up with the match funds for that. So if we're not able to get donations for the match, we certainly will need to discuss what we could do with the budget for next year, if that's a possibility. So both of those grants we should really talk about. If we can't get donations, we would need to really put that on a budget item request list. I do not know if we will get a timeline extension for the Williamson Park Planning Grant. I'm unsure. Apparently, prior to myself, there was already an extension provided, and I was unaware of that when I was asking for a timeline extension. I'm hopeful, and I'll work as hard as I can to get that. If not, I've been in close touch with DCNR, and I know there's many other possibilities in the future for things that we can possibly do to acquire funds. We just need to come up with the match, the supporting match funds. Other than that, we have a lot of other items on the list that have been accomplished in the past month. Our 5-year audit for the pensions has been completed. There are a couple findings, and once I have a report on that in writing, I will be reporting back to council regarding that. We have executed the gas boy contract, and as of today, some work has been being accomplished with the gas boy. So John, our public works superintendent, has been working diligently with that. We just removed the old computer items that were in the office today. He did that, and it was nice to see that, because we're going to be installing, like I said, the installation of the new system should be up and running soon. So that was one of the priority items that we did have on our list to accomplish, and we're moving forward to get that accomplished. John is also working with an architect because of the roof. As you may have seen if you come in the building, we have a trash can that's out there, which is a receptacle for the water that's coming from the rooftop. And we have some be careful signs out there because of wet floor. So please be careful in that area. That will be the second project that we are working on that has to be accomplished for the borough. So those are items that we're diligently working towards. We did have to place our 2021 curb ramp project with an extension. So we will be working with that in the spring of next year. And that is positive news, actually. It's starting to get cold rather quickly this year. We also have been working with the older cops grant with Darletta and the chief. We're trying to get through with some of the objectives and get the paperwork accomplished with that. We've also been working with, with ISET and their staff. We did have a new module from Edmunds placed in our Edmunds system. Our fire inspections are starting up again. We had started that, and all of the invoices from previous times is now completed, and the invoices went out. Tracer is now set up to speak with Edmunds, and this is a wonderful thing. So any of the funds that are coming in, this is an in and out project. When the fire inspections are done, the companies the businesses are billed, they're invoiced, it goes directly into Trazer and Edmonds, and it pays the third party for doing the inspection. It's at no cost to the borough or the borough residents. It's physically the businesses that take care of this because it is an inspection at their business. And I'm very proud to say that we're finally up and running with this process because it's very important. We have a lot of apartment complexes and businesses that have not had the fire inspections, and we're working towards getting them accomplished. So I'm very proud to say that that this is taking place, and it's actually taking place in a very efficient manner towards the borough.
Can I ask a question about that? I think, and I could be wrong, but I didn't want to think that I didn't want the public to think that there are never fire inspections done. When there's a changeover at those apartments, that's part of the checklist. Is that correct?
No, not just the changeover. What we're doing is we're doing inspections, the fire
For businesses and so
yes,
forth.
For businesses,
yeah, but I'm saying our code.
Certainly, when there's
there is someone moves out of one apartment and someone else moves in, they do inspect that in part.
Yes, that's a certificate of occupancy instead. Right. So that's dealt with on a different level, right. but yes.
I know that, I'm sorry that the two different things are both about the fire, and some people just hear, what? No inspections? And they won't, No,
I'm glad you addressed that.
We have a lot of apartments, so.
And we did do inspections last year. We started the inspection process last year. I started it, although finding that there was no module for Edmonds and no place to have the invoicing done and so forth. So we've moved forward heavily with this program. It's not that we haven't been doing them, we have, but now the program is in full effect, and we have it working through the system that should have been utilized, and that's what we're doing. So thank you for that. There definitely has been inspections done, and we're continuing to rise to a higher level of inspections. Are there any other questions from council?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Committee reports. Do we have any committee reports?
I'm sure you do. Okay.
I have one from the Finance Committee.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. The meeting was on September 28th. 4 major parts to it. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Judith came in to summarize the Kapoor report as to the borough's finances. A copy of that, she went through that in detail, and people from the public and from the council asked questions. A copy of the report will be put online. Number 2, Tom Josiah is working on reconciling our accounts. As Judith reported earlier, that's almost done. 3, the Morrisville Library. Judith reported a loss/overspending of some $42,000 for the past 2 years. Nancy questioned some of the accounts. That the final amount of the loss/overspending has yet to be determined. Travel and entertainment/convention standard operating procedures or policy. Captain presented, as requested of Borough Council, we started to discuss it. Captain presented a copy of reports alleged to be an SOP, but without any dates or without any supporting signatures. Supporting signatures were supposed to be presented at a later date, and we've yet to resolve or come up with a plan for the council how is to proceed. And in short, that's the report. We'll have a hard copy uploaded, Judith, the next day or two? We'll have a hard copy uploaded to the borough website the next day or two.
Of which?
Of the financial report of the Finance Committee.
The Vijay report has been.
No, not the Vijay report.
Of the Finance Committee. Is that what you're asking? Minutes of the Finance Committee?
Yeah.
We don't place the minutes on the.
Okay, fair enough.
We do the agenda.
Okay,
yes,
and the Vijay report is uploaded?
The Vijay report is up, yes.
Good.
All of the items that were requested at the Finance Committee to be placed on the borough sites were placed.
I assumed as much, but it's always helpful to hear you say that.
I'm glad you asked.
Good.
Thank you.
And that's the report. Thank you for listening.
But if anybody wants their own copy of the minutes, I'm sure Andrew would be happy to give you one.
Absolutely.
Because we'll just stand in line at the copy machine and do that all day long.
Don't even go there. Okay. Nancy, do you have a report?
Well, I have a question. Oh. I was going to piggyback it on Judith's report. It's from the zoning. It's from ISET. They mentioned the new businesses, which I'm hoping the residents can take can, be part of it. And that's at the 101 Washington Street. I think there were 8 or 9 that was listed, but 2 of them are now up and running. And then the Bird's Nest on Philadelphia Avenue. And then there's one that I have to say I'm not familiar with. It's Molto Bene Ravioli Company. So right here on East Bridge Street. So I'm thinking they're down closer to the bridge, I guess.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. And then
We're happy to say that there were 4 new businesses for September.
And then they did mention in the report that they're meeting with potential developers and fostering relationships to bring new businesses, which I think is great, and housing. I'm guessing these aren't large developers, just developers for.
We have several viable applications for the Planning Commission, upcoming applications that they have been working with applicants on. So in the very near future, you will see some applications come in and some Planning Commission meetings will be posted.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And if I may quickly, I just wanted to add to that, so I'm glad you brought that up, Nancy. There was a hearing for the Nabula Hookah Lounge, and there'll be a continuance on that hearing. In your packet was November 4th, and there'll be a continuance. As soon as we know what the date is, we'll certainly insert that information for the council to see in the drop.
Any other committees? Yes, Catherine.
I have a report for the Morrisville Borough Parks and Recreation meeting that was held Tuesday, September 27th in the Borough Council chambers. The meeting was opened by myself at 7:05. In attendance was myself, Nancy Sherlock, a committee member. Andrew Lubin was not present. Public participants was Mary Herenda, Debbie Colgan, and Susan Bryce. And I'm not going to read it verbatim, but we discussed and planned for the benches to be painted in Wason Park. We had several volunteers, and we did get 4 or 5 of the benches completed. They're a lot more work because they haven't been painted since, like, someone said 1968. I don't know if that, no, John just shook me, so that's not true. Anyway, but they take, metal brush scrubbing, and so we do that. And we did discuss the tree planting in Williamson Park that will take place on November 19th, and we're looking for volunteers. Miak will coordinate with John later. We just discussed the Memorial Bench program, and then we reviewed the events for the Fall Festival on October 9th. And we had some questions, and one of them was to find out if Andrew was ever able to send that letter to his contact requesting for a donation improvements in the park.
No, no, I didn't, and you know why I didn't? I'm not going to until you come through with your information.
Whatever.
I'm sorry, could you, what is it that you were asking for? I didn't hear you.
I asked him if he was able to complete the grant. I gave him a grant synopsis, what he asked for, but he wanted a bunch of research, and I haven't been able to do that. So okay. I kind of turned it back to him. So, and one of the requests was to change out one of the tennis nets and replace it with a pickleball. We're getting a lot of asks about that, but that'll probably be in our next year budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Judith, you want to read a notice about the zoning meeting?
Yes, thank you, Council President. We also have a notice of a zoning hearing that is scheduled for Monday evening, November 7th at 7 p.m. right here in Council Chambers. We would like to just let everyone know with the public that this is regarding the 70 East Bridge Street property. The petitioner is asking for a use of a D23 smoke shop and tobacco store. So if anyone is interested in attending the hearing, please do so. It'll be here again on November 7th. That would be Monday evening, November 7th at 7 p.m. right here in Council Chambers. Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Nancy. I had been planning on bringing it up, see?
It was in the pile of announcements. Thank you.
Yes.
Anything else before we move on? Okay, moving on to action items. Item 8A, can I get a call for a motion to adopt the 2022 Halloween policy?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
You know, we pass this policy every year. Is it possible just to pass a policy and just have it out there?
And then people will forget about it.
Well, we could
We'll
make
find out with policies. This brings it to everyone's attention so it's fresh in their minds. I see nothing wrong with doing it as a part of the seasonal celebration. Anything else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay.
Passes 7 ayes and 1 abstention, Council President.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Item 8B, may I get a call for a motion to acknowledge receipt of $54,191.92 from the Pennsylvania Department of the Auditor General and to approve distribution of 100% to the Volunteer Firefighters Relief Association?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay.
Passes all ayes 7, 1 abstention, Council President.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Item 8C, may I get a call for a motion for the borough manager to execute Johnson Controls Plan Service Proposal 3-year contract in the amount of $6,305 year 1, $6,495 year 2, and $6,690 year 3.
So moved.
Do
Okay.
you mind if I take Ms. Marie as the,
Carlitha? Sure.
is it okay? And I'm sorry, the second?
Me? Me?
Second would be Nancy.
Whatever.
Okay, hold on 1 second, please.
Okay.
1 second, please. I'm sorry.
Do we have any discussion?
Yeah, I do. So is this quarterly or is this yearly, $6,305?
Yearly.
Yeah, I had the same question because the actual contract says
Quarterly.
annual and then it says quarterly.
Right.
And I don't understand why they say quarterly if they're giving, does that mean we're paying it?
Paying quarterly.
Do we divide up into 4 payments?
No, we're paying it yearly.
And then, the contract, very confusing.
So, for instance, like I saw in that contract that they were looking at the electrical panel, but John says the electrical panel is a mess. So what have they been doing this whole time that we got to the point where our electrical panel is ready to disintegrate?
This electrical panel that they're looking at is the electrical panel with the heating and cooling system itself. It has nothing to do with our electrical panel that's downstairs in the building. This is the panels that is with the system. They come in and they clean the system. They make sure that it runs the electric when the electric goes out.
At the generator?
Thank you. I apologize.
That's all right.
Yes. So that's the electrical panel that they're inspecting and so forth, making sure that works.
Are you happy with their work?
I am. We must use them. We don't have anyone else that we can use because of the Johnson Controls agreement that the borough had entered into several years ago. We must use Johnson Controls. So it was imperative that we enter into a contract with them because when I first arrived, I had asked John to have some things checked. So they had worked with us to check them. We had gotten some of the systems cleaned and so forth, and it's imperative for us to continue to do that because the system really needs to make sure that we need to make sure that it's running properly.
Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Parker. Are they still?
Parker is
I'm
no longer
sorry.
here, I'm
I
afraid.
told myself I wouldn't do that.
Me.
Mr. Paul.
Go ahead.
Change
Ms. Sherlock.
the last name to a different letter than P. This is actually for Judith, though, the question. My understanding is they're still doing an audit every year just to make sure that the systems are in very good shape. I mean, I haven't seen one. I don't know the last time I saw one, but They come in and they make sure that everything's running and that we are still saving money.
I believe that audit was dropped last month or the month before.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I also have a quick question. Just so I understand for myself and everybody who may not have as much information, are you saying that the contract we currently have requires us to do the service with them and pick up the second contract as opposed to doing it with someone else?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can add to that, my understanding, the reason we do that is because of the guarantee that they guarantee their work and the project itself. And if you bring it, this goes for everywhere. You bring in an outside contractor when you already have a piece of equipment, they can't guarantee that that it works in the same way.
No, I guess my surprise is that the maintenance like that wasn't in the original contract, but I never read it, so I was just curious. Thank you.
So, okay.
Okay.
Motion in a second.
Yes, may I get a motion?
No, you have a motion in a second. We have a motion.
We have a motion
in
second, so now we just vote on it. Any other discussion? Any further questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Abstentions?
7 ayes, 1 abstention, Council President.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're now to item 8D. May I get a motion to amend the original contract for 2021 CDBG curb ramp agreement, extending its term to March 31, 2023?
So moved.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
7 ayes, 1 abstention, Council President.
Okay.
So just for the public, I know, Jason, why you're abstaining, but could you just let the public know why you're abstaining?
Sure. I have been on the council for 2 hours. I do not have sufficient information to ethically vote in favor or against any of these measures at the moment. I look forward to catching myself up as fast as is humanly possible so that the next time around I am able to vote with a clear conscience in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate that. I also want to point out that it was impossible for us to provide him with all the meeting materials before tonight because he was just sworn in at 5:30. So it was a catch-22. We have him here, but he has his hands tied. But it's a great learning experience for him, and he can certainly contribute any other comments that he wants to make. Anyway, moving on. Item 8E. May I get a motion to provide a conditional offer to extend a conditional offer of employment to hire full-time public works employee Darnell Farquharson pending background investigation?
So moved.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
So good.
Serious face. Serious face.
7 ayes and 1 abstention, Council President.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Item 8F. May I get a motion to adopt a resolution to apply for Morrisville Borough Bridge Street Trail Construction Project Grant, PA. Bridge Street Project, which provides, I'm sorry, that's a semicolon. PA. Bridge Street Project provides matching funds for the grant.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
7 ayes and 1 abstention, Council President.
Yeah, I didn't who made the last motions.
Okay, moving on to filling vacancies. At our last meeting in September, I invited the public to apply for some of these vacancies that we had on both the library board and municipal, the Morrisville Municipal Authority, and you responded. So we now have a plethora of candidates, which means we're going to have to vote to narrow down the field.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I would be happy to remove my name since there's a vast interest from the public.
Okay, thank you, Helen. The way we're going to conduct this vote first for the library board, I've talked this over with our borough solicitor, is we'll take nominations. Each person gets nominated, each nominee gets voted on individually. So as they get nominated, we will vote yes or no. If they get a majority, that nominee is then seated. If there's no majority, we go on to the next one. And if we don't get two with majority votes by the time we've gone through the list, we go through it again with a runoff of those, I guess, the next highest votes, which may be, presumably there might be a tie for that. I know it sounds confusing, but we think this is going to be the most efficient way to move this along.
I nominate Lonnie Johnson. And I also want to make one other comment. There were a lot of these that did not include their phone numbers in their letters of interest, and so it makes it hard and difficult to reach them. So in the future, can we just make sure that they provide that? But I'm going to nominate Lonnie Johnson because he is a librarian and has library experience.
I'd like to, can I make a
Is there a
nomination?
second?
Oh, I second it.
Okay. Then we vote on Lonnie Johnson. Roll call.
I apologize. Ms. Sherlock?
No.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
And before you proceed, I'll just point out the obvious that, the members of council should kind of decide which two they want. And so vote for your first choices. And we can start worrying about second choices if those don't come through. So decide now kind of who you think you want before you vote on each of these individuals. Anyway, I know that's obvious, but I just wanted to point that out. Go ahead.
Mr. Paul? Mr.
Paul? No.
Mrs. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Lubin?
Yes.
And I know Ms. Ms. Price Engelhardt, you seconded, but are you a?
No.
You're a no, but you.
That's okay.
Just be second.
Oh, okay. So you're a no.
You don't require consistency.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Hall?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 yeses.
Mr. Manis?
We have, I'm sorry, Mr. Manis?
Yes, abstain.
Yes.
For the sake of clarification, I'm going to abstain from voting as I have zero information on any of these people. I'm sure some of them are wonderful, but I apologize. I have to abstain from all.
Thank you. So an abstention would be considered a no? Am I correct?
For purposes of majority, yeah.
So we have 1.
Well, the majority is really everybody. It's everyone seating anyway. We have 8. So the majority requires 5.
4.
So we have 4 yeses, we have 3 noes, and 1 abstention.
Majority?
It's tied.
Majority of those.
Still requires 5, yes.
Yeah, still requires 5.
And the mayor breaks the tie.
And the mayor.
And for the, in this case, it would be considered a tie. So, and for appointments and filling these types of offices, the mayor can break the ties with his vote as well.
So
Okay,
the vote is 4 yes, 3 no.
4 yes, 3 no, 1 abstention. So I will place the mayor here. So Mayor Anderson, a yes or a no?
No.
So that would be 4 no. Well,
The appointment didn't
the
carry.
appointment did not carry.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Maria Diaz. Okay, should we just do the roll call?
Yes, I will. 1 minute, please.
Sure.
Okay. Ms. Sherlock.
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Paul.
Yes.
Mrs. Murray.
Yes.
Mr. Manis. Mr. Lubin.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Ms. Price Engelhardt.
Yes.
2, 3, 4, 5, 7 yes, and 1 abstention, Council President.
I'd like to nominate Andrew Lubin.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Lubin.
Clearly, yes.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Ms. Price Engelhardt.
No.
Mr. Minnis. Mrs. Murray.
No.
Mr. Paul.
No.
Ms. Sherlock.
No.
1, 2, that would be 3 yes. 1, 2, 3, and 4 no, and 1 abstention.
I'd like to nominate Judith Miller. She was on the board before, and she also has a librarian background.
Second.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Lubin.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Mrs. Murray.
Yes.
Mr. Paul.
No.
Mrs. Sherlock.
No.
Mrs. Price Engelhardt.
No.
Mr. Minnis. So, let's do this. 2, 3, 4. I have 4 yes. 1, 2, 3. 3 no, 1 abstain.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Alicia Law.
Wait,
If it's not a tie vote, the mayor has to break the tie.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
No.
Can I nominate somebody?
Sure.
I'd like to nominate Ann Perry.
Any second?
Do you need a second for nomination?
Yes, we've been doing them.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Mr. Lubin.
No.
Ms. Hall.
No.
Ms. Price Engelhardt.
Yes.
Mr. Minnis. Mrs. Murray.
No.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherlock.
No.
I have 2 yes. 1.
I don't think I voted.
Oh, I am sorry. Mr. Paul.
No.
I apologize.
Everybody?
2 yes. 2, 3, 4 no, and 1 abstain.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Alicia Law.
Where's all that up?
What?
5.
I have
I had 5.
5 no.
I had 5 no.
1, 2, 3, 4. I apologize. 5 no. Thank you.
I second that, Paul. Bob.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Who did you nominate?
Alicia Law.
Alicia Law. Mr. Lubin.
Yes.
Mrs. Murray.
No.
Mr. Paul.
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Ms. Sherlock.
Yes.
Ms. Price Engelhardt.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. Maness. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 yes, 1 abstention, and 1 no. I believe we have a deal.
Yep, you have
Alicia Law.
two completed appointments.
Okay, so Alicia Law is appointed, and
Maria Alejandra Diaz.
thank you, appointed.
And
To the library.
I just want to thank all the people who indicated interest in this, applied for this, including Ann Perry and Judy Miller and Lonnie Johnson, Andrew Lubin, of course, and Ms. Halal, who withdrew at the end. Thank you all.
And Mr. President, real quick, I just want to echo that. This is a great list of people that were willing to volunteer for the board, and I couldn't be more thrilled. I hope we see a lot more of this in the future.
Yeah, I just want to, I'm particularly happy that we have new people. We have new faces. I was concerned that we have a lot of the same people duplicating, same people that are on council or on the committees or on these commissions. I think it's great that we get as much of the community involved and participating as possible. So again, I appreciate everyone's participation. Let's move on to the Morrisville Municipal Authority.
I'm going to nominate myself, Helen Halal.
Wait a second.
Oh.
We have 1 appointment to complete the remainder of a 5-year term expiring January 4, 2027. Okay.
I nominate myself.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Robinson.
The call jumped out. This is for Miss Lawhol, correct?
Yes,
Correct.
for MMA.
Okay, yes. Yes.
Mr. Lubin.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
Yes.
And I apologize, but I need to continue with Mr. Maness. I know you're going to abstain. Mr. Paul.
No.
Mrs. Murray.
Yes.
Ms. Sherlock.
No.
Ms. Price Engelhardt.
No.
I have 4 yes, 1 abstain, 1, 2, and 3 no. I believe that's a tie.
No.
I'd like to nominate Don Rice.
Second.
Mr. Maness.
Abstain.
Thank you.
That went out of the way first, huh?
Mr. Robinson.
No.
Ms. Hall.
No.
Mr. Lubin.
No.
Ms. Price Engelhardt.
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Murray.
No.
Mr. Paul.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherlock.
Yes.
I have 3 yes, 1,
Or no and an abstention.
4 no and 1 abstention. Motion fails.
I'd like to nominate Robert Perry.
I'll second that.
Mr. Robinson.
No.
Mrs. Sherlock.
Yes.
Mr. Menes. Ms. Hull.
No.
Ms. Price Engelhardt.
Yes.
Mr. Paul.
Yes.
Mrs. Murray.
Yes.
Mr. Lubin.
No.
I have 4 yes. 3 no, 1 abstention.
It puts us in a
Be a
tie.
tie?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor would be a yes, so it would be 5 yeses. So Robert Perry would be appointed.
Again, I want to thank everybody who's indicated interest. I want to thank Don Rice and Helen Lowell, as well as Mr. Perry. Appreciate the participation.
So we have the Planning Commission that has one appointment that has been vacant since January. I'm going to nominate myself. I did check in council. There could be 1 council person on the Planning Commission. So I'd like to nominate myself to be on that board.
Can we do that, or do we need to put advance notice for that?
What we usually do is ask for a letter of interest. So that's usually the policy that we do hold. I mean, or should I say, I shouldn't call it a policy. I will not call it a policy. I apologize. That is the procedure that we have upheld, that if anyone is interested, they provide either an email or a letter of interest. It's entirely up to the council as to how they would like to proceed.
Well, I mean, this has been open for some time, as Helen points out. All of these are available for anyone who wants to indicate interest.
Yes, everyone has had interest.
And no one has done so. I have an allergy to vacancies. I mean, I think it's best if we can fill it. But I'd like to get a sense of of council whether we should act on this tonight or not.
I'd like to act on it tonight. Pushing this off another month or 2 doesn't get it done.
I think we can wait. That's just me. I was just going to ask these others that did not make these other appointments, maybe they would be interested in the civil service or the planning.
It is already advertised. It's been advertised for months.
Yeah, it's been out there for a long time.
But is this who is the, why is this, what created this opening? Do you remember? I mean, I know we had someone leave. We filled that, and this might be another.
Mr. DeWild had left.
He didn't leave. He was asked to be renewed, and this council said no to him. I would be happy to renominate him if this council would vote him back on.
I think we should continue with we talked about procedure and process tonight, and I think we should go that way.
I agree with Ms. Sherlock, and as the borough manager pointed out, we typically require a letter of indication. If you submit a letter, Helen will vote on it at the next meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I would like to fill all the rest of these. So if you know anyone else who might be interested in this civil service alternate, please send them our way or the planning commission. But we should get all these things filled. They've been vacant long enough.
I apologize. Was there a motion or anything?
No, really,
Just discussion.
There was just discussion.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
So moving on to other business, item 9A, we have a request for alcohol use permits at Williamson Park for events. And we've asked our borough solicitor, Scott Holbert, to take a look at both the state and local law on it, as well as the lease agreements and any other instruments of conveyance or restriction on the property of Williamson Park, to find out what our options are before we decide whether, as a policy matter, we'd like to open it up.
Sure. As they are borough parks, there is no state law that prohibits alcohol in parks. Obviously, there's laws that prohibit alcohol in state parks, as that's the state's decision. Same thing with the county. The county also prohibits alcohol in their parks. Most of the municipalities we've represented generally permit alcohol in the parks. Some, including your neighbor to the south, I guess that's south, right? Falls Township, prohibits alcohol in the parks generally, but does allow for a special events permit for some type of thing. Under the borough ordinances, you have two separate ordinances that prohibit alcohol in parks. There's a general alcohol ordinance that prohibits, drinking, consuming alcohol in public places, and within the Parks and Rec ordinance itself, it is also permitted. As it relates to Williamson Park, you have deeded property to you, and you have leased property making that up. There are covenants, restrictive covenants that run with the land contained in those. The one, as it relates to the one in your own deed, it's a restrictive covenant against you. Going through the lease agreements, it's actually a part of the chain of title. So the lease agreements you have from the churches across the river in Trenton, it is actually a deed restriction. It's a restrictive covenant in their deed. I believe the year is 1885 was their deed. Obviously, we know these leases are very old themselves. They're from the 1920s and 1930s, and it is contained within the lease agreements that, as a part of the deed to the churches for this land, that alcohol is not to be sold or consumed on those properties, and it is a restrictive covenant. Generally, as we've moved and we've progressed as people and opened things up, we've had a favorite towards property rights. Some of these types of restrictive covenants can be found to be not effective. One of those, however, being alcohol restrictions in the type of situation we have, doesn't fall under that one, meaning that if someone were to try to enforce this against both the borough and the churches that are the actual owners of the property, they possibly could succeed in court. I'm not going to say the definite, because one, the people who write the deeds, i.e. the grantors, the people who originally provided the land to the churches, and their heirs are the people who would have to try to enforce the action via court action. I can't say when they'd be successful. All I can say is these types of restrictions, as it relates to alcohol, are found. The distinction is whether it runs with the land or whether it's a personal restriction. If they find it's kind of a personal restriction, courts don't favor them, and they sort of let things go and say, no, it's not enforceable. However, alcohol is not one of those. Like I was saying, it does something that they say runs with the land. And looking at case law recently, I think the most recent case on a restrictive covenant, I mean, it's not very recent, but 2002, generally when we look at things like that and how the laws progressed in property law, something from 2002 regarding a restrictive covenant is considered a pretty recent case. So just know that. And that upheld the restrictive covenant? Yes, it was upheld, the restrictive covenant, as something that can, one, be upheld if it's properly written. In this case, like I said, I mean, we're dealing with deeds and lease agreements, in this case, from over a century ago. Could someone try to enforce it? Yes. Do I know who that is? I do not. Would they be successful? I can't say that they would, because the time kind of does matter. But looking at the way the lease is written and where that deed restriction comes from, it doesn't come from a restriction from the churches put on us. It was actually a restriction put on the churches themselves that carries through to us as a chain of title. So just knowing those are the things you would be fighting against if you were looking to change the policy as well as change the ordinances in the borough.
Any questions?
Thank you for that information. The reason this came up is I've been approached at several of our Parks and Recreation Committee meetings about it. And then I've had phone calls from various vendors that are interested in it. I talked with one of the owners of, was it Yardley Beer Company today, that said he did his first one at Falls event, and I actually attended that event to see how it is handled. I don't know if the church, what part of the park the church owns. So I don't know if that would be a determination. I'm not saying that I want this. I'm saying that it's been brought to me by the public, and so I'm bringing it to council and for people's response. It's not for me to decide. It's, I'm just bringing it, which I've been asked to do, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, how the properties are laid out obviously is going to come into play. While we have title searches, we don't have surveys. So where the property boundaries are of what parcel goes to what part, yeah, I can't tell you what that is without a real survey. Because even because it's been so long, our property records, I go into the GIS map for the county, you click on the tax records, it lists it all as one parcel, which we know is not the case. So, yeah.
Well, can I suggest that for next steps, can we revert back to the Parks Committee, Catherine, and determine whether or not we want to proceed further on this, which will require Scott and his colleagues at Flager and Associates to do more research, and recognizing that will incur a cost, but it won't be prohibitive. But just recognize from now, we need to clarify the legal situation if we decide we really want to do this. So it shouldn't stop us, but it's a consideration.
I think that's a good idea. I think that I've already got the agenda set for the November meeting, but probably the December meeting, I can get more advertising out there and make sure I invite various people, like the different vendors who might want to come and speak.
Yeah, and for all you out there in the public, all you Morrisvillians, if you have a feeling one way or the other, please send an email or a text to any of us up here on the dais. We're interested in hearing what you want.
Council President Paul, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Robinson.
Why don't we just ask the churches?
I think that would be our first step. But, that's a good suggestion, Scott. Although the area that I think would be best suited for security purposes would be the tennis courts, because it's already fenced in, especially since we have a security issue, and then we'd have to have the chief assess the situation along with making sure we have, enough volunteers and so forth and so on. And that is not the area.
That's not the part that I'm arguing. Like what Scott Holbert said earlier is that our neighbors to the south have it. There's a lot of parks that prohibit alcohol, but you can get a special permit. Okay? The problem is all those parks that are getting special permits, their park isn't owned by a church in another state. Their park is their park, and they can do what they want with it. Our park is not really our park. It doesn't belong to us. We're leasing it. Okay? If I rent an apartment, I have to ask the landlord if I can put chandeliers in it, and I'm not going to go do it. So if we ask the churches, hey, do you mind if we have an event that serves and people are going to be consuming alcohol on your property a couple times a year? Can you give us permission for that? So it's nothing to do with volunteers. Again, it's the root cause. It's the root owner of it. It's the church. And as it stands now, it sounds like the church. Now again, it's over 100 years ago. It could have even been during Prohibition that it was like a no-brainer that was inserted in there. But all the other places in the state, in the country that do this, they own the land. We have a unique situation. And the last thing we need is getting drug into court by some church in Trenton over, something that we did without their permission that they said we couldn't do, 120 years ago. That's my take.
Well, I agree with you, Scott.
The church first, then we get the special permit. Special permit's not hard to get. There's beer fests all over the place. So that's probably not going to be the problem. The problem is, our problem isn't with the state and with the Liquor Control Board. Our problem is with our landlord, say, for lack of a better phrase, our property owner. That's where my angle.
I think as a courtesy, we should definitely talk to or send a letter to the churches, but the churches don't own this whole park. They don't own the whole park. They only own a very short piece of it, just a couple acres up there, closer to the Trenton Makes Bridge, along the levee. That's why I brought up the fence.
The parcel, from what Scott said before, is it shows up as one parcel. So, I mean, theoretically, and I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'd love to see a beer fest at the park, but I'm playing devil's advocate. What if we set up a beer truck on the second base of the T-ball field in between the two pavilions, and someone from a church in Trenton comes over and says, "Hey, that's my land. What are you doing here?"
Scott, you're absolutely right. I mean, I can assure you, we will not go forward. We won't have our first beer event there without having at least dealt with the churches. One where either determined that they have that they no longer have any interest in this or any power to restrict us, or we go and ask them. But in any case, I'm sure we'll have some conversation with them if we take it this far. We're not going to wait till we have an event and see if they close us down or not. And you're right. We can talk to the church for virtually for free, but we need to put it in context as to which restrictions which churches are imposing on us and what area it covers. We need to do a comprehensive review of the whole thing. But yeah, as an initial matter, tomorrow somebody could call the churches and say, "Do you guys care if we have beer at our event in Williamson Park?" And they'll say, "Where's Williamson Park?" But that's a Anyway, it's a point well taken, and I think that I'd ask Parks and Rec Committee to kind of work that thing through too, as to how we make that approach. What's the easiest way? Do we do it through Flagrant Associates, or do we do it through the Parks Committee? I don't know, but we definitely need to have clarity and certainty about what the churches can do to us, what other restrictive covenants are on that land, and what's our ability to work through them or around them, and then we can decide, at the same time decide, do we want this or not?
The issue when it comes to alcohol, everything gets magnified.
Right.
And let's say, I mean, granted, it would be insured, we'd be bonded and everything, but let's say something tragic or was a catastrophe happened along with this. Would that church be on the hook for it along with us? Is that something you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, well I'm sure they would seek indemnification and all that if we did work out anything with them, but that's...
Right.
Mr. Paul. Oh, Mr. Paul, I just want to say I'm glad that we're at least having this conversation. I mean, I think it's been talked about, every now and then there's a group that talks about it or we think about it, but I'm just glad that we're finally bringing it up.
I mean, we all have our own feelings about alcohol, for ourselves and others, but it's not up to this council to impose that on everybody. On the other hand, if it's either legal impossibility or difficult, and we don't want, and the majority of the town is happy the way it is, then we can leave it the way it is. But I certainly agree that we should have the discussion.
Do we know, did McGrath do the surveys, and is that something that we could get, or he didn't even get? I know he was surveying the park.
Well, no, that was, Don Rice brought these leases to our attention early on in this process, as we all know from the lawsuits. But I don't think that.
I can answer. I don't believe that was the type of survey he was doing. I think it was more of like a ground and soil survey, not a property boundary survey.
I thought he was, because he had pink.
We talked to him about open issues. We kept coming back to this issue. By the way, if you talk to the churches, and we never got it. We never got any kind of answer. So I don't think they ever got around to those issues.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So Catherine, you'll take this up at the next Parks Committee and let us know what you think. And in the meantime, the public is certainly invited and welcome to give us their views on this. Our last item of business is we have here a discussion regarding clarifying the borough policy and procedures for paying accounts payable. This is really kind of a placeholder for something much broader. And as Ms. Sherlock mentioned earlier, you know, we're trying to implement or maintain and adhere to policies and procedures so that everything doesn't become a one-off, everything isn't anecdotal, that we kind of know how to handle general issues on an ongoing basis. And one of the things that came to my attention just in the day-to-day business of the borough is that we have some vendors who are requiring us to pay in advance for certain services. And our borough manager suggested that that's not a good practice. I certainly don't think that it's a wise practice. I'd like to know more why those vendors require payment in advance or not, but it kind of signals that we need to have, if we don't already, we need to have policies in place to kind of to say whether we have any policies with respect to payment in cash or payment in advance, whether we're, you know, who is entitled to commit the borough to make those kinds of payments. Does everything have to go through the borough manager? Do individual council people have the option to negotiate issues? This is kind of the result of the fact that we've gone through a lot of upheaval in this town and in this borough hall over the last 3 years. You know, we first got hit with the pandemic, then unfortunately Scott Mitchell, our former borough manager, got very ill and passed away. And we had nobody really in charge for the next few months. And then by the time Judith Danko got in here, we were already, you know, had a backlog of a few thousand issues. And now we're still trying to get our hands around them. In the meantime, we also had our president move away. We have a few new council members who were trying to break in, and they're doing a great job trying to catch up. But it just signals and just reinforces the need for us to develop institutional guardrails and institutional procedures that aren't dependent upon having a certain borough manager in place or having a certain council member who's got certain connections that they can do this, or a certain president that can do things better than others. We need for this community to be able to operate independent of any of the individual personalities that are up here or are out there. And maybe that's a pipe dream, and it's certainly nothing that we're going to accomplish in the 14 months left on this council's term. But we can make progress. We can make a start of it, and we can make a commitment to doing this. And hopefully, other councils in the future will follow through. So it's going to be ugly. It's going to be messy. We're going to be coming by with a number of different issues from left field, trying to get the sense of the community's feeling about them. We're going to have a lot more fights up here about it. But I think in the end, it's going to be in the community's best interests. And a lot of this is going to start with the Policies and Ordinances Committee, which hasn't had a meeting in over a year, and I know that because I'm the titular chairman of it. But we're going to get that back up into action and working, and I invite, you know, as many council members as have the time to join that committee and work with me on that. But we can't go on like this. I think everybody knows that we can't continue to kind of live hand to mouth, only make reactive decisions. We need to have a plan. We need to have a policy. We need to have procedures in place. We need to know what we're doing. When anything comes in the front door, we know where to put it. We know who to direct it to. We know who has authority over it and who has responsibility. And right now, we have a lot of people with responsibility but with no authority. And then we have a lot of other people with authority and no responsibility. We need to bring those in line in some rational fashion. And I certainly don't have many ideas on how to do it, but I'm committing myself to do it, and I hope that the rest of us can join in. And like I was saying with the alcohol use, for this, any of you out there with ideas on how this borough could run more efficiently, you know, please keep the cards and letters coming in. Does anybody want to add to that, or is that broad and bombastic enough that we can move on? Okay.
So there was excellent information.
And I'll say real quick, you did use the word fighting. I want to say we have a lot of spirited debates. And Jason, you'll say, I've had more than one former president tell me, and this is something you'll see as we go, most, you know, despite the debates you see up here, most everything, the high majority of things will pass unanimously. So it's part of the process. So thank you. I agree with that, Mr. President.
Well,
thank you so much.
And I will also urge all of us, when we go through this painful torturous process, that we try to maintain civility and courtesy and respect for each other and for all the members of the community. And, you know, I, for one, fail at that very often, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to try harder. And I think that if a little common decency and good humor and good faith go a long, long way. And without that, we're hopeless. In any case, yes, Mr. Robinson.
I don't want this to be a dig at anyone or say anything, but speaking as a resident for 50 years before I was a council person, with the streamlining and everything, some of the minutia that we can eliminate. Okay. Now I know there was a disagreement on it earlier, but I'm going to go on record and say I agree with Helen about the Halloween policy. We have had Halloween trick-or-treating here for way before I was born. The curfew has always been 8 o'clock. And that's a common sense thing on Halloween. And if you don't know, I don't think the council should be telling the residents, you know, the Halloween policy. Ask your neighbor, or ask the teachers in school, or ask when you pick your kids up from school, ask someone that's there, hey, what time can we trick or treat or whatever. I mean, the Halloween trick or treating is a common sense thing in the borough, and we do this every year. And I know it only took 2 minutes, but that's 4 minutes. Don't spend it 2 minutes talking.
Mr. Paul, this is now open for debate.
I'm going to spend one more minute on it, Mr. Robinson, because you know, as you were talking, you almost convinced me, along with Ms. Halal, that we shouldn't have to adopt the same resolution once a year. That does seem a bit silly, and we could just make it part of one of our manuals to put it on the calendar, that we just put it up on the borough portal and make an announcement from the dais around Halloween, saying, hey, you know, we don't have to make it into a formal action. But I don't necessarily agree with you that we don't have that there's no place for borough council to weigh in on procedures, safety procedures for Halloween. People don't have to comply with them, but we can certainly recommend them.
Mr. Paul.
Yes.
If I may, part of this is through our police force, and they're the ones that we're asking the people on the street to keep safe. So they weigh in a little bit. But what I also like to mention is not everybody's lived here for 50 years. You have people that come in, you have new people, new families, new kids, and maybe they'd like to know that, you know, we actually have a policy. And you're right, it seems common sense. Everybody goes home. Most people just go home when the lights go out. So, and sometimes it's not 8 o'clock. Sometimes it's sooner, sometimes it's later. Pardon me? Okay.
See, I think that you don't have, a policy was voted on, it doesn't change. If there are changes, I understand, but I'm with Mr. Robinson, we should streamline a lot of this. I'm not done.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
You can put it on the portal, we can make an announcement. I mean, we didn't even read what the policy was. So if you're a new resident, you don't even know, you just know we passed the policy, which, by the way, Chief, it's 8 p.m., right? Kids off the street at 8 p.m. So, you know, like we're not really taking that extra step. So if we pass a policy and then we just talk about it, you know, the October meeting, put it up on the portal, the chief says it, I think that has more impact than just we're just wasting time with voting on something.
Let's add that to the agenda for the next policy and ordinance committee.
There you go.
Seriously.
Yeah, I think we've beaten this one to death enough at this point.
It's just an example of.
No, I get it. You know, and I don't mean to cut anything off, but I think we'll re-examine this as a general matter for any of these repetitive type resolutions.
Exactly.
Not a problem.
Well, Mr. Paul, you said it efficiently in the beginning when you said it's just a reminder of no one's going to think about this policy in February.
Exactly.
So, but I do have
the Valentine's Day policy.
We received something in our packet. I don't know if we're able to announce it. It's just about some activity down there on Post Road. It's not even in Morrisville, but it's on our border. And I just wanted to know, I don't know, the public could know and go, you know, oppose it at Falls, but it's down there, 2300 South Pennsylvania Avenue, which unfortunately just adds to the mess that's going down there anyway, and trucks. So it's a warehouse. but not on our property.
Okay, anything else for borough officials?
I have something. So there was an article in the Courier Times, which I'm slightly disappointed in the people on council here, actually very disappointed. It had to do with truck traffic. There have been many meetings that everyone on council has been invited to, and some people just chose not to go or were busy, which I understand. But there's some information in this article, and that's disturbing because the residents are reading it. One of the statements is, I know our state and county officials are aware of the issue. They knew North Point was coming. They should have started this 3 years ago. They did start it 3 years ago. Mr. Mitchell was in charge of it. Unfortunately, he passed away. So they were aware of it. I started having meetings with the state reps in February about this. They have been doing things. North Point has been very receptive to a lot of things. They have put up signs. They have plans to put up more signs. So it's sad to me that a lot of this information was not put on there. Another thing that is said, it says, and Morrisville officials want to know why the traffic concerns weren't figured out when the center was designated. I don't think that two council people can speak for all Morrisville officials. You weren't appointed to make these comments, and they shouldn't have been made. They should have made it been as individual comments, not as a group comment representing council and their feelings. The last thing is, Chief McClay, I noticed that you also made a comment in this article that you were talking about the quality of life. And I know that when we had the meeting with PennDOT on August 10th, which all of council was invited to, PennDOT had asked you for a plan. And I was just surprised to see that you didn't add anything here about a plan about the truck traffic and what you could possibly do to help it. And finally, no mention was made that there was an opportunity to hire an officer that had truck certifications, and this council turned it down. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Helen, but that officer did not have full truck traffic certification.
He's missing one class, which he would have taken.
Oh.
Well, and also I'd like to say,
Just leading the public.
as we discussed before when we talked about this truck officer.
Wait a minute. We really shouldn't be talking about employee matters at the public meeting.
Well, this is something that's been discussed before.
We're supposed to tell me. Tell me what the advice is. I didn't know.
Yeah,
what your point is.
Please refrain from discussing certifications and qualifications of employees and people who have applied to positions with the borough in public.
Understood. My comment was more about manpower. When this was discussed in the past, it was brought up that, of course, we would love to have a truck officer. We would love to have a detective, but that cannot happen until we get back up to the manpower that we need to do. And so I'm confident we will get there, and we do want those things, but it has to be in the right order. So thank you.
I apologize for going against the attorney's recommendation, but we have been inundated with the public contacting us and lambasting us for not hiring an officer who was already qualified to be a truck traffic officer or truck traffic an officer with truck certifications. So I think the public has been misinformed. That's why I brought it up. And as far as the article, which I did not see in the paper, that was never once was I representing an entire borough. That woman contacted and asked me if I would meet her down there and just make some comments, and that's all that was. Thank you.
Anything else? Do I have a motion for? Oh, I'm sorry. What?
Please so kindly read the vacancies.
Oh, okay. The borough manager asked me to read our current vacancies on boards and commission appointments. So still open, we have on the Civil Service Commission, one appointment as an alternate for the remainder of a 6-year term expiring December 16, 2025. Library Board, done. Morrisville Municipal Authority, done. Planning Commission, as we discussed earlier, one appointment for the remainder of a 4-year term expiring December 31, 2025. And that concludes all our vacancies. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye. You can say aye to that.
Aye.
Abstain.
Opposed? Just I need to say that. No, okay.